معكم مهدي ابو 50 مدير العمليات في شركه كوانت، ومعي الليله الاستاذه نور سلامه. نور leads the partnerships and community at MAGNiTT, the startup data platform for emerging venture markets. Just to give a brief introduction, she works to connect the region's tech startups to capital and to the wider entrepreneurship ecosystem. Previously, she led the PR and communications at El Gebra Ventures, Egypt's largest VC fund, where she worked with portfolio companies to craft and pitch compelling stories to relevant stakeholders. Prior to that, she even led the PR and communication at Rise Up, Egypt's leading entrepreneurship event, mashallah. And Noor has an MA in anthropology and BA in sociology. So we're definitely going to have very interesting insights tonight, inshallah. And so I'm going to start things off by speaking about the competition itself. راح أتحدث القليل عن المسابقة، ما هي، كيفية التقديم عليها، مزاياها وما إلى ذلك. فلو نبتدأ الآن راح أشير معكم السكرين عندي. Let's go ahead and do that. All right. So the MIT Enterprise Forum Saudi Arabia chapter. MIT هي منظمة ابتدأت من قبل MIT Technology Review. MIT Technology Review طبعا بنفسها بدأت في عام 1898. منظمة جدا قديمة وعريقة تابعة لجامعة MIT itself، ومنها انطلقت مبادرة MIT Enterprise Forum المرتكزة على إقامة مبادرات ريادية لتنمية هذا المجال والقطاع. طبعا ابتدأ الموضوع في المنطقة العربية من خلال الشابتر السعودي ل MITEF Saudi Arabia, which then يعني through that we kind of spread out MIT في المنطقة العربية بشكل أكبر من خلال الشابتر Pan Arab وما يتبعه من شباتر كذلك أخرى. So let me kind of reduce this. So MIT Saudi Arabia is a part of a global network of chapters dedicated to the promotion of entrepreneurship and innovative worldwide. We inform, connect, and coach Saudi entrepreneurs, enabling them to rapidly transform ideas into world-changing companies. طبعاً بدأ الشابتر السعودي في 2015 بهدف building a better world by accelerating the creation and growth of world-class businesses and social enterprises. فقاعدين نتكلم مش عن فقط normal startups, but rather حتى اللي في مجال الأفكار اللي لسه عندهم فكرة ريادية، وحتى كذلك الريادي الاجتماعي اللي قام بعمل بزنس بهدف حل مشكلة اجتماعية. والفيجن من هذا كله is to inform, connect, and coach local entrepreneurs, enabling them to rapidly transform ideas into world-changing companies. وإن شاء الله على يدكم يصير هذا الموضوع. And we are a global network of local organizations inspired by MIT, and we're open, of course, to the entire world. So ناخذ طلة سريعة على الكومبيتيشن itself في السعودية. عندنا الايدياز تراك زي ما قلنا قبل شوي اللي هي مسار الأفكار. طبعا بنشوف الشروط حقتها بعد شوي، لكن بشكل عام اي شخص عنده فكره رياديه وتك بيست ممكن يتقدم للمسابقه. الستارت ابس people who have already started their businesses اللي لها تسجيل قائم وما لذلك بنشوف الشروط بعد شوي. والسوشيال تراك زي ما قلنا اللي عنده بزنس بهدف حل مشكله اجتماعيه. أأمل أن الصوت واضح، قد يتقطع الإشارة قليلاً، لكن بالنسبة للإمباكت بس عشان نستعرض يعني مدى تأثير البرنامج هذا على مر الخمس الجولات الماضية. إلى الآن تقدم أكثر من 7500 شخص إلى مسابقة MIT عبر الخمس جولات الماضية، وفيها تم رفع ما يزيد عن 1,16 ريال of equity free investment للفائزين تحديدا في المسابقة. أكثر من 260 رائد أعمال تم يستلموا تدريب، mentorship، coaching، boot camps وبرامج ساعدتهم على تنمية أعمالهم بشكل كبير. 29% من السيمي فايناليستس كان عندهم at least one female member. وما يزيد عن 45 ستارت ابس نتجت عن هذه المسابقة، قبلها ما كانت حتى موجودة. وبمعدل 4 موظفين تم توظيفهم في أول سنة من بعد انتحاق هذه المشاريع الريادية إلى المسابقة، والحمد لله تم خلق أكثر من 110 وظائف بفضل هذه المسابقة. فايش المسابقه تقدم؟ بكذا موجز سريع. عندنا المنتورشيب بروجرام a professional development tool conducted during the Saudi Startup Competition for the 45 selected teams. We're talking about the semi-finalists هنا. وعندنا كذلك البوت كامب وهي عبارة عن coaching sessions professionally conducted for the 45 selected teams in round. طبعا محدثكم كان مشارك في المسابقة العام الماضي، فأقدر أقول لكم من خلال تجربة أنه المنتورشيب والبوت كامب والكوتشنج وكل البرامج اللي التحقنا فيها في المسابقة كانت جدا جدا مثرية، فيعني طبعا نوصيكم عليها بشكل جدا كبير. وحتى كذلك غير التدريب اللي يحصل، كذلك عندنا investment forum اللي هو الستارت اب انفستمنت فورم او الاس اي اف. الاس اي اف هذا عباره عن اكزيبيشن مدتها 3 ايام توفر لرواد الاعمال فرصه لانهم يستكشفون يعني المشاريع الرياديه الاخرى في الاقليم وحتى خارج الاقليم. world wide practices، يكون عندكم فرصه للاطلاع عليها لمعرفه يعني كيفيه عمل المجال هذا حتى في الدول الاخرى، على اساس نكتسب منهم يعني التجارب المفيده هذه. وهذا فضلا عن طبعا غير رواد الاعمال الاخرين اللي هم المستثمرين نفسهم، which is يعني the main focus طبعا في المسابقه، انه كيف يعني نتواصل مع المستثمرين، نعرض عليهم بطريقه سليمه وناخذ الفيدباك منهم اللي جدا جدا يهم صاحب العمل يعني انه يحصل على الفيدباك هذا، لانه في النهايه يعني اهم راي هو راي المستثمر يعني في البزنسز. فطبعا this is very helpful in itself. وطبعا يعني كون المسابقه العام هذا نظرا للظروف الحاليه راح تكون كلها اونلاين، فهذا ان شاء الله حتى يعني اقدر احكيكم برضو من تجربه يعني انه طبعا السفر والتنقل والديديكيتنج يعني yourself in a different area قد يكون صعب، فلذلك الاونلاين opportunity السنه هذه فرصه من ذهب ولا تفوت، فانصحكم فيها وبشده. فيا يعني الاوبجكتيفز بشكل عام من المسابقه هو او من حتى الاكزيبيشن اتسلف الاس اي اف exposure to investors للinvestment opportunities، الانسايتس اللي ممكن تحصلونها من الاعمال الاخرى والمستثمرين، وmerging together and bringing everyone اللي هم اللوكال والريجنال والانترناشونال investors to Saudi Arabia. وطبعا هذا يعني بحد ذاته مكسب للجميع، يعني انه يتم الاطلاع على الممارسات المختلفه هذه بالديفرنت بنش ماركس بالديفرنت اوتكمز بالديفرنت يعني investment deals اللي تحصل باشكالها القانونيه حتى المختلفه، انه يكون عندكم نظره يعني نظره كذا مقربه للموضوع، هذا جدا يفيد. وطبعا هذا فضلا عن انه يساهم في تنميه القطاع او يعني التنميه الاقتصاديه للبلد عن طريق المنشات الصغيره والمتوسطه بما يتوافق مع رؤيه سعودي 2030. بالنسبه لي هذا الامباكت يعني على عجاله بالنسبه للاس اي اف itself، لكن حتى لو نشوف how to apply ممكن نفتح الموقع الان. لو بس اوقف sharing this screen and I share another one. وطبعا اي اسئله ولا حاجه مرحبه فيها خلال النقاش هذا كله، وطبعا راح نتطرق لموضوعنا الاساسي الليله بعد شويه، لكن نبتدأ الان بس مع اليه التقديم. بالنسبه للتقديم this is the website itself MITEF Saudi.org. هذا الرابط طبعا ممكن احطه في الشات بعد شوي. بالنسبه للموقع نفسه يعطيكم نبذه about what the competition is about, why choose MITEF and what are the strengths behind it, what are the tracks that are accepted. وهذا جزء جدا مهم الجميع يطلع عليه اللي هو التايم لاين للمسابقه نفسها، انه متى يفتتح التسجيل ومتى ينغلق والخطوات القادمه خلال المسابقه. وهذه بعض الارقام تتكلم عن المسابقه ومخرجاتها. This is to get more familiar with the competition من ناحيه ايش يتم داخلها والبرامج اللي تحصل فيها والدورات والبوت كامبس، طبعا الشركاء، وفي النهايه احرص على معلومات التواصل وبالذات السوشيال ميديا اللي يتم الاعلان فيها عن الفائزين، عن اي مستحدثات او ابديتس وما خلافه. بالنسبه للتقديم اللي ممكن يحصل بكل سهوله انه بس تدخلون الرابط MITEF Saudi.org ومن خلاله تضغطون على زر apply for competition، تضغطون عليه بيطلع لكم الصفحه هذه، بس تسوون حساب. الحساب يكون فيها verification email توصل على البريد المسجل، ومن بعدها ممكن تدخلون بالcredentials على هذه الصفحه. الصفحه هذه تحتوي على كافه الاسئله والمحاور اللي لازم يتم تعبئتها، وجدا بسيطه يعني تقريبا مدتها ما تاخذ اكثر من نصف ساعه، هذا حتى للي يحب يفصل يعني. وزي ما يعني احنا لمسنا من خلال التجربه it's a simple form ما يستغرق يعني ما فيها any complicated information، لكن برضو اذا في اي اسئله ممكن توجهنا للايميل ومعلومات التواصل الاجتماعي اللي موجود باسفل الموقع هنا. وكذلك في رقم واتساب ممكن يتم التواصل معه حتى for easier communication. و just to have a very quick glance ناخذ طلة جدا سريعة على التراكس المختلفة وشروطها. ممكن ندخل هنا في 2020 و 21 نبدأ في الشروط. طيب بالنسبة للايدياز تراك طبعا لا يخفى على الجميع انه في جوائز ان شاء الله نقدية راح تكون مع كل من المسارات الثلاث. بالنسبة للايدياز تراك راح يكون فيها المركز الأول جائزة ب20,000 ريال، والمركز الثاني 15,000 والثالث 10,000. بالنسبة للشروط each team should have at least 2 members, one of them should be Saudi. The teams are required to have a proof of concept، حاجة ممكن يثبتون عن طريقها جدارة المشروع، غالبا اللي يسمونه المنتج الأولي أو MVP. Having the startup registered is a plus، كونها مسجلة بشكل قانوني ونظامي هذا يساعد يعني حتى في القبول. Startups should have a validated business model، نموذج عمل واضح ويسهل يعني إيصال المعلومة عن البزنس للحكام وكذا. ووجود reference and recommendation from a mentor or an industry expert would help a lot. And the idea should be in any commercial, service, industrial, tech or digital business. طبعا عندنا اشتراطات جدا مشابهة للمسارات الأخرى، لكن بس ناخذ عليها طلة سريعة عشان نعرف الفروقات. عندنا الستارت اب تراك، الجوائز طبعا فيها اكثر من الايدياز بكونها مشاريع اوريدي انطلقت في السوق. فالمركز الاول راح يحصل ان شاء الله على 100,000، المركز الثاني على 25,000 والثالث على 15,000. الشروط في البدايه تقريبا متشابهه، بس the team هنا في الستارت اب تراك the team should have a working product or service and traction and sales. The startup should be generating between 100,000 to 1 million riyal per year in revenues, and the startup should have not raised funding above 1 million riyal, and the startup should be legally registered in Saudi Arabia. وآخر مسار عندنا اللي هو السوشيال تراك، نطلع على اشتراطاتهم بشكل سريع وبعدها إن شاء الله راح ندخل مع الأستاذة نور. طيب الجائزة الأولى this is the social track. الجائزة الأولى عندنا على 100,000، الجائزة الثانية على 25 والثالث على 15. Each team should have 2 members, so this is pretty much similar. The team should have a working social track. Yes, I think the social track needs revisiting في الاشتراطات ممكن، لكن we'll make sure and check about that and make sure it's updated. لكن هنا ممكن يتم الرفرنس إلى الاشتراطات هذه فيما بعد. وهذا كل ما يخص فقراتنا فيما يتعلق بالمسابقة. وننتقل الآن مع الأستاذة نور to speak about the data platform for emerging venture markets. نور أهلا وسهلا، حياك الله معنا.
Ahlan, let me just thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed your talk. Let me just share my screen so that I can also share my presentation.
I'll remove my video. Please go ahead.
First of all, hi everybody. It's really great to be here. I'm very grateful to be here with you. We MAGNiTT are partners with MITEF Saudi, and I love this team. I love the program, and so really it's an honor to be here. I will not take up too much of your time. So the topic of my talk today is data, the driver for emerging venture markets, which is a very complicated way of saying that when you have more information, you can make better decisions. That's effectively why we do what we do. A lot of people have heard about MAGNiTT. They know that we are a news platform. They know that we do the research. For example, we partnered with SVC to produce the Saudi Arabia Venture Capital snapshot. We do it every H1, H2, every like twice a year. We have our databases, which have 16,000 startups on the platform, about 3,000 of which are based in Saudi Arabia. We also have the community of investors, so we can connect you to investors as well. We currently have 100 investors that are running applications on the tool, so you can use it for free. So you can go apply to them directly, use the platform, as well as use the tool to go in, use any kind of filter that you can think of to start creating lists of people that you want to connect with. So that's basically what we do. We are an online platform that has all of the important entrepreneurship stakeholders, the founders, the talent, the community, the investors, the enablers, the accelerators, all of these kinds of, the government, all of these kinds of organizations in one place with a shared purpose of growing the tech entrepreneurship space in the region. We started off in MENA. We started off in Dubai. We didn't really know what we were doing, like so many startups. We pivoted a couple of times. We were founded in 2015. And first we were sharing news, and then we were sharing, we realized that we had all this data. We started producing reports. And then we as a startup were trying to find our market fit. Where we are now, and I'm sure it's going to change because so many companies change, but where we are now is that we are scaling beyond the MENA region. We are trying to build the first startup data platform that is accessible, transparent, complete for what we are calling emerging venture markets. Emerging venture markets are effectively markets that are they're not as well served as your US, as your Europe, as your like these kinds of ecosystems, but they're thriving and they're also disconnected. So if you think about Latin America, you think about Southeast Asia, Middle East, North Africa, what we find is a clustering effect. Startups in MENA will typically scale to other MENA countries. Startups in Latin America will typically scale to Latin American countries. As startups in Southeast Asia will scale to Southeast Asian countries. When those might not necessarily be the best markets. Yani if you have a transport startup and you're based out of Saudi Arabia, there are markets maybe that we don't have access to, that we don't have information on, where the opportunities are not visible for us. In Latin America, in sub-Saharan Africa, in etc. So the idea is that we're using data to underpin important founder and investor decisions that can facilitate sort of cross-pollination across these borders. To date, in the MENA region, we just also scaled to Turkey and Pakistan. I was saying right before this call, we have tracked almost $5 billion in investments in MENA-based startups until today. What this means is that there has been almost $5 billion invested across a variety of investment stages. At first, it was mostly focused on earlier stage companies, but now as time passes and companies become more mature, you start to see that that distribution shifting slightly towards later stage companies. Also, when you're tracking the data so extensively, you get to see up close and very personal the impact that something like COVID has had on our ecosystem and on the world that we operate in. So this is basically telling you what I just told you. In terms of funding that we've seen, okay, so up until from 2015 to 2019, you're seeing pretty consistent growth, excluding these like super $100 million deals, these super $100 million exits. You're seeing consistent growth in how much money is invested in MENA-based startups, and also in how many deals. Up until H1 2020, which is where this data is tracked until, we were growing very consistently. So think about it. Half of the year in 2020 was pretty much almost the total of full year 2019, which was already a very strong deal. But what do we notice that's majorly different? Is that your deals dropped, even though the capital remains pretty much the same, matched, your deals have dropped really significantly, right? And when we look at it as a function of a couple of things. So the first thing is that we're seeing more mature companies. What you'll find when you look at fundraising is if a company is raising $500,000 at its seed round, it's going to be raising 1.2 to $3 million at Series A, depending on industry. The company is gradually raising more money. But as you see more of those companies growing and maturing, and therefore the ecosystem is maturing with it, we start to see more capital invested. But what we saw as a result of Corona was really fascinating and very unexpected. Not only is the ecosystem maturing, but we're seeing investors initially start to look to de-risk their investments. And so we saw more investors investing in later stage companies at the expense of earlier stage companies. Until Q3, we're still seeing that trend. That doesn't mean that there's not capital available, especially if you're a startup in Saudi Arabia. So for example, in MENA H1, Saudi Arabian investors were the most active investors in the region and also in the wider MENA region. In terms of the Saudi ecosystem, you guys are very lucky to be sitting somewhere growing incredibly fast. So let's take a look at the funding evolution in Saudi Arabia and how fascinating these numbers are. So let's say you kicked off properly in 2015 with 16 deals and 7 million invested. By the time we're at 2019, see, the growth is gradual, but we see $58 million invested in 68 deals. Something happens between 2019 and H1 2020. Please remember, again, this is half the year. And we are not only seeing that you've overtaken, but you've overtaken by a significantly wide margin. Again, we see that deal drop, but the deal drop is not as dramatic as where you see it across the MENA region. The investors are still active. They're still active in the earlier stages, which is a really important thing for us to bear in mind. And I'll illustrate that as we move forward. So when you look at the country comparison by the amount of funding, you see Saudi Arabia ranking third in terms of capital invested, but it's gained. So UAE has historically taken home the largest amount of funding. Egypt, a not super close second, but this is significantly more than it was last year. And so the trajectory seems like KSA will be overtaking Egypt for capital invested. And the trend seems pretty consistent for the number of deals where actually Egypt leads. Egypt and the UAE are pretty evenly matched, but what we see with that inflow of investment is that we're creating success stories, we're creating more opportunities. COVID-19, I mean, we joke about it, but it's been the most rapid accelerator of digital transformation, right? I mean, I joke all the time that if this doesn't get people transacting online, I joke about it for Egypt, which is where I'm from. If this doesn't get people transacting online, I really don't know what will. It's been a really, really powerful imperative for us to increase our adoption of e-commerce startups, of us to transact online because it's now the safest way to transact, and the sort of logistics plays that facilitate it. Suddenly you need to get more stuff delivered from point A to point B as people spend more time at home. So here's a super cool opportunity for all of these guys to build startups that cater to the new normal or the new version of normal. This is a very interesting trend. So 2018, 86% was going towards early stage companies. So that's pre-Series A, and 14% was going to Series A. You're gradually seeing those numbers decrease, but I mean, it looks gradual, but these are pretty dramatic changes. You drop 2% and you start seeing Series B rounds. H1 2020, again, remember, this is only half a year, right? You're seeing even lower at early stage, and you're starting to see that development. The startups are growing quickly. We're also seeing big ticket investments. So in H1 2020 in Saudi Arabia, not only do you have this pool of super active investors that are able to write these checks, you're starting to see these big 36 million, 18 million, $13 million rounds in some really cool startups. So you're seeing e-commerce, you're seeing edtech, you're seeing transport and logistics, these industries that we know are positively affected and see this uptick in demand because of the world that we live in now. So just to reflect that, we don't just see this distribution at the highest number of deals, at the largest deal, we see it consistently in the top 5 industries by total funding, right? You see e-commerce really taking home the cake, and everybody else sort of like running behind it, but they're still there. They just need a little bit more time. Education was a huge winner across the MENA region because it saw this surge in adoption, but of course not the same as e-commerce. It's a rising industry in Saudi Arabia. Actually, all of them are rising industries in Saudi Arabia, but we feel it most clearly with e-commerce. You also have a pool of very, very active, very well capitalized investors. In fact, of the, so again, we have this tool on MAGNiTT called the Investor Applications tool. You go with your startup profile, you say, I'm a startup based in Saudi Arabia, I'm in X industry, I'm in fintech. You input your filters. I am looking for seed stage funding. And it will produce a list for you of investors that meet your criteria that are running applications and sourcing startups from the platform. So you can go in, just click on them, apply. The majority of the most active investors on that tool are actually based in Saudi Arabia because they are investors that have capital to spend. They are investors that are looking to build and drive forward an entrepreneurship ecosystem. And they're investing at all stages. So you'll find in your house, whether as an accelerator or as an innovation fund, is earlier stage, your BIAC. You have corporate venture capital funds that are very active. You have RAID, which is investing kind of Series B, Series C, as well as, of course, quite a few UAE-based VCs that are, or Bahrain-based VCs, like 500, for example, that are investing there. There's also a very healthy angel investment network in Uqail. So we're seeing not only is there a good existing pool of investors, but we're hearing and seeing new investors that are popping up every day that are ready to deploy capital in Saudi-based startups across the different stages. Of course, every investor has a different thesis on what they want to invest in, but most of them will say upfront, these are the companies, this is what they need to have, and this is what I find interesting about them. A key to getting investment and securing investment is the ability to do that homework, to make sure that you are relevant to them and they are relevant to you. You're not just picking investors for capital, you're picking them as strategic investors. So make sure that you understand why they're investing in you, what value they can add to you and your business and your team and your growth plans and your vision, and that it's a sort of more of a marriage and a union than it is like a one-time transaction, because they're going to be, if you secure investment, they're going to be on your cap table for a very long time until you or somebody else buys them out. So it's like marrying somebody. Make sure that they're really the right fit for you. We effectively as MAGNiTT work to track all of this data, but also to facilitate the connections between investors, founders, ecosystem accelerators, not just within the MENA region, but also cross borders. So the reason we go to emerging venture markets is because data enables us to make opportunities visible. If you are, again, my example of your transport startup, if you're a transport startup that is addressing the base of the pyramid, and you're doing ride hailing for motorcycles and three-wheelers, and it has a social impact, you might not necessarily find a market for that in Dubai, but you probably will find a market for it in Pakistan. You probably will find a market for it in sub-Saharan Africa. So what we try and do is we use data to make opportunities visible in the markets that you don't necessarily know are interesting for you until that data is made available. And thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking to you. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any questions. Mahdi, if you have any questions, or the audience. Thank you.
Allah ya'tik al-afi. Thank you very much, Noor. That was very insightful and very amazing. Honestly, these reports are truly one of a kind in this region. We don't have abadan this kind of reporting or kind of insights to venture through. But thank you very much for providing that. It's always insightful. And it's always something I'm curious about, actually. So being in the community and partnerships, the segment of MAGNiTT, what would you kind of recommend for people to kind of check out or review in MAGNiTT, or how can they access these reports, and what's the best way to kind of get to them?
So we're very, very lucky in that we have some really amazing partners like MITEF or like SVC. So we have partners that will sponsor certain reports. So if you are interested in any data specifically about the Saudi Arabian ecosystem, we also do free versions of most of our reports that have like the executive summary that are available for public download. All you need to do is go to MAGNiTT. I'll share the link here. but go there and download it. And obviously it includes a lot more information than I just shared now in this presentation. What people find incredibly useful, and it's one of the most popular tools on the platform, is the investor applications tool. Because a huge challenge that we have, this is also, let me geek out for 5 seconds because this is something I'm so proud of. We have our 100 investors. What does everybody know about investors in the region? That a lot of them are not very responsive, right? They have a really bad reputation of just not being very responsive. You can message them and wait 6 months, 2 months, an associate will come to you, maybe they won't. So what we started doing was we started ranking them in order of responsiveness, okay? So the investors who were responding at 100% will appear first. And so you start penalizing the ones who are not as responsive. The number change was crazy. So in like 2 months, our average responsiveness jumped from something terrible across the whole tool from like 40% to now we have like 30, 40 investors every month that respond at 100%, no matter what, come rain or shine. They've started, and by the way, a response can be no, but at least it's a
reply back.
It's a response, right? Like you don't need to base any more decisions on that. Another thing that we found is that a lot of founders waste their time applying to investors where they don't meet the thesis or the mandate or the criteria, just because there is nothing clearly that says we invest in 1, 2, 3, 4. If you are interested in us, you need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a lot more like, send me a pitch deck. Maybe my associate will look at it. So it's not a very fluid, data-driven process. So what we've done is we've removed the element of send me your pitch deck, maybe I will answer you. And we have literally made it, because the platform is a data platform. It's like applying to a LinkedIn job. So the data gets pulled from your MAGNiTT profile. It goes to these guys, so you don't spend 15, 20 minutes refilling the same information over and over again. And on the other side, they get the information and they get what information they need and exactly the information that they needed, because they pick their questions, right? If they know that they need to, a lot of Saudi investors, for example, will invest in companies if they scale to Saudi Arabia, right? So they'll be Saudi based. And so willing to scale to, plans to scale to is an important field for them, because, or مثلا Ibtikar Fund is a Palestine-based VC. They only invest if you are 51% Palestine. And yet because they're a popular VC, because they're in the news often, they were getting all these applications of people that were totally irrelevant, that didn't meet their criteria. So it's the idea of just matchmaking using data to save time for all of these parties and try and facilitate more meaningful connections. Because founders' time is very, very valuable, and it's very, very limited. I mean, startups, I've only ever really worked at startup and a VC. The time issue is a real issue.
Can't agree more. I can't agree more. Very true. And we also have another question from Hazem. So he's asking about the nitty-gritty. So he says, how can we collect specific information on any kind of business inside KSA? طبعا being in MAGNiTT, I'm sure you guys have come across a lot of data sources or databases, some partners that were more insightful than others. So what would you recommend people to check out? And if you have any websites as well, Hazem kind of noted on that as well, please feel free to share.
So this is one of our problems in the region, and it's not just in the region, to be totally honest. Emerging venture markets are really underserved from a data perspective, right? You can't just, like my counterparts, your counterparts, our counterparts in North America don't have a problem. They'll just Google it. The public information is available. I can see what company raised what amount of money. It's literally like doop, 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 and all that data is available to them because it's publicly available. Here, we don't really have that in a uniform way across the region. Some partners have it, but it's definitely not aggregated in one place. It's definitely not accessible to everybody. So what we try and do is we try to be that platform, right? So we try for ventures. Not another thing is, as Arabs, is our willingness to disclose information also is built into business culture. We're not super willing, right? Like valuations, مثلا, companies don't want to share their valuations, pre or post money valuations. They don't want to share their traction. They don't want to share their numbers. They don't want to share their sales, even sometimes with their investors, right? To go out of your way, but put that information on the internet, I think is a much bigger stretch. So what we found is that we try and aggregate this information in one place, but you really can never get data on companies internally unless you know them very, very well and you have a very good reason to get that data. Otherwise, they just don't want to share it. I don't know, Mahdi, what do you think?
I can't agree more, to be honest. Yani, this region is definitely more difficult than others to obtain that kind of information. Yani, I'm kind of thinking up of some international websites that have been able to kind of penetrate the local region. So I'm thinking, for example, Duns and Bradstreet. I'm going to share their link right now. So they have, mashallah, a very international database for businesses worldwide. And حتى يعني, even us, يعني, ourselves as Quant, we've gotten a request from them to kind of have our information. So mashallah, يعني, قديش they reach out is very interesting. I think another, يعني, and again, يعني, we're very lucky in the sense that يعني, we've had people approach us. But another website was crunchbase.com. I think they also have, and I'm so, what I realize as I'm speaking, these might be competitors of some
No,
nature.
خالص. Crunchbase is actually really cool, but the reason that we exist is because Crunchbase doesn't have depth in the market, right? So they have only like a fraction of the information and very little depth to it. Number of iPhone users or Toyota users, etc. That's actually, you'll find some market research companies that do that. So I know this because I was in a VC, and so they have to do these valuation exercises and market sizing exercises. A lot of people will actually do it themselves, right? So it's way cheaper than spending all this money and getting a market research company. And there's a top-down model and a down-up model where you're like you market size it by population, and you just work out that calculation yourself. Just because the information is not very reliable, and where it is reliable, it's very, very expensive.
Very true, very true. And this is where MAGNiTT comes in, الصراحة يعني. I've contacted them myself for memberships and whatnot, and they were incredibly يعني, cooperative. They even had deals in certain seasons يعني, that make it just so tempting to sign up. يعني, this is all
so we're working to make sure, I mean, we're partnering with MITEF for all of their participating startups to give them access to the data for free. As part of our
qualify then.
It's part of our partnership, yes.
Amazing.
And the idea, but it's also important to remember that our data is about venture. It's about the venture funding space. So if you want to know who your competitors are, who else is in data and business intelligence based in Saudi Arabia, how much they've raised, so that when you go and approach an investor and you're like, I would like $1 million, you could be like, this company raised $1 million. This company raised, like, it helps you to benchmark your asks and identify exit opportunities. Now it's the information you need to fill out your pitch deck when you're speaking to investors, right? They want to know who your competitors are, why you're different, why you're asking for what you're asking for, how much they will exit for. How much they will exit for is something that we don't really know in the region because we haven't seen that many exits. But what they can do is they can compare your business model to similar markets. So we give the ability to do that for both the founders for a price and to the investors for a very, very different price.
Indeed. So لا, it's definitely a difficult region to navigate through يعني. بس الحمد لله فعلا يعني, a lot of يعني, different industries are emerging and getting better يعني, and especially from even a database perspective يعني. I say this being in a data company ourselves.
I know.
And I should be the one to speak about this more. بس يعني حتى حنا اللي نواجه صعوبات في الموضوع. And we've limited ourselves actually to the data of our clients, not the data out there يعني, in the public domain. I could speak from experience, and truly it's not always that easy, but as you've said, Noor, يعني, marketing companies do wonders in this, and يعني, mostly through sampling حتى يعني, they don't focus on everyone, but they take certain samples and from that extract whatever information is needed. but yeah, it's getting better, alhamdulillah. I was wondering, Noor, يعني, if I were to ask myself, حتى يعني, for حتى the attendees here with us, what would you say, يعني, from the insights you've seen is kind of, especially the startups, very small micro startups, when's the best time, or at one point are they ready to kind of start applying for investments? Would you say يعني, it's just from the idea phase they should start seeking it out? Well, is it يعني, having the dream team with them?
As
يعني,
a
what would you...
region,
Yeah.
we're very, very lucky to have funding almost at all stages. Like we don't have funding at series whatever EGF,
Right.
but also
Yeah.
our companies aren't there yet, right? Like for the initial part where we are, we're very, very well capitalized. Okay, I mean, of course there's gaps, but it's available. I think the question is, what are you going to use? You need to have a very, very clear answer to the question. What are you going to use the money to achieve? صح? Because ultimately, think of raising money, and this is what my old bosses at the VC used to say, right? Your startup is a Ferrari, okay? And money is the gas. So how much gas do you need to be able to go really fast without weighing yourself down with too much money that makes it difficult for you to actually achieve your goals? And people are like, what, too much money? La, for sure, it's more money it's more rope to hang
more
yourself.
responsibility. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And so if you don't have a clear plan, it's not even a plan, but it's a vision, right? For what you're going to do with this money. And again, let's remember, fundraising is never an achievement in and of itself, right? It's part of your path to building the best transport startup, or I mean, whatever problem you're solving. And I think follow the pain. If the pain is big enough, the opportunity is there.
Absolutely. Especially that we have a very hungry market as it is. Yani, even with all these enterprises that we have, it's still very hungry.
It's so young.
Hey, absolutely.
Which means there's a lot of space for people to come and create solutions that make their mark. I mean, the joke, right, is where there's an abundance of challenges, is there's an abundance of solutions that entrepreneurs can create.
Wow, very much so. And what kind of difficulties, Yani, would you say you've seen in people that try to secure investments but have faced struggles with, Yani, the most major ones? Yani, is it the wrong presentation? Is it the wrong vision? Is it
haven't done their homework and haven't been able to demonstrate that they have a team to execute, right? A lot of times founders it's a one-man show, right? Especially at the early stages. And that's fine for one round of funding, but it's certainly not fine for later rounds. And because there comes a point where, khalas, you can't do everything. You won't be able to do everything. You're one person, you have 24 hours a day, you need to sleep for some of them. Like at some point. It's a talent is a really, really huge component. You need to find people that complement your blind spots. And I think where we are not seeing strong teams, and I don't mean strong as in have like 800 years of experience. I mean hungry, visionary, dedicated, and that by and large don't have blind spots. If Mahdi is really, really, really great at maths and Noor is really, really great at like speaking to customers, it's a great team. But if both Noor and Mahdi are really, really great at math and we don't have anyone who can speak to the customers, investors will look at that and identify those gaps. Another mistake is that the total addressable market is not big enough, right? We'll find super, super niche solutions for super, super niche problems. Even if you got 100% of that market, remember, if you're getting money from a $50 million fund, typically they're investing in you because they think you can return the value of the fund. Like that's a good rule of thumb. Right. So if they see that you can return the value of the fund, they will invest in you. You need to think big markets, big opportunities, big problems, so that investment makes sense for them as well.
Absolutely. And I'd like to add here يعني إنه الحمد لله فعلا مسابقة MITEF truly helps in this regard يعني with the planning, with the يعني identifying the market needs, the data يعني that's out there and how to access it يعني. The boot camps, the mentorship, the coaching definitely helps a lot with this regard. So
I
yeah,
have a personal anecdote on MITF.
please.
My old colleague at Algebra was
Mhm.
one of the early winners of MITF. They were the founders of a company called Tutorama. Okay, it was like an edtech marketplace, tutoring online for the Egyptian market. Where, like, I don't know if it's really big in Saudi Arabia, but private tuition, getting a private teacher, especially for IGCSE, A levels, the American system, the IB, is like everybody does it. It's built into the system. So they were like, hey, why can't we create a rating system so that parents know that the tutors are great? So he did this. He had this company. The company died later, which is fine. I mean, companies die. But
Right.
he's now the principal at Algebra Ventures. He joined as an associate. He's a lawyer turned entrepreneur turned VC guy, and he says such great things about the program that it really helped him identify how he could move forward. And even if company number one fails, by the way, failed entrepreneurs, second generation entrepreneurs are oftentimes the most successful ones because they've made the mistakes before.
Absolutely.
And at early stages come in, oftentimes the investors are betting on you, the founder and the team, rather than the market, because you're probably going to pivot 2-3 times before you start to make money, even after you make money.
Very true. And we've heard that countless times, yani, approaching investors and closing rounds and kaza. That's truly what they've said time and time again. We're investing in you, not the company.
Exactly.
That says a lot about the value of the people involved.
Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. So that pretty much, I would say, rounds up the questions that we've received so far. Of course, any more questions are welcomed, but also, yani, feel free, everyone, to reach out to the MITF organizers through their social media accounts and their email and WhatsApp number. We look forward to having everyone register, and thank you, Noor, so much again for contributing with us tonight.
Thank you for being such a wonderful moderator.
Thank you, you're too kind. But yeah, we look forward, Yani, to what's coming ahead. Yani, the region is absolutely, as you said, blooming and growing from the data insights that you've shared. And yeah, we're just really, really hopeful. So good luck to everyone that's participating in the competition and that's not participating as well. And hopefully we'll see you in upcoming roadshow events. Thank you everyone. Have a very, very good night. تحية طيبة للجميع. يعطيكم ألف عافية. السلام
Bye.
عليكم.
Bye. Have a beautiful day, guys. Evening now, actually.
Yeah, you too. All the best.